Hello once again. As you see, we went old school and we used paper. So I hope you can more or less read it, at least in the first rows. Our group, number 3, it was about universal participation. So according to the guidelines, we thought we can focus on the issue number 3 in the guidelines and the issue number 4. The number 3 was called knowledge transfer, and number 4 was called, if I remember that correct, active and smart involvement of civil society. So we had a feeling that that correlates and responds mostly to our topic of universal participation. I have to say it has been a wonderful day. I had a very good, very encouraging group, and we stayed even almost 1.5 hours longer than the official schedule because our talks felt so important and so productive, so we didn't feel that we are allowed to interrupt that productive intellectual exchange, probably because it was everything on voluntary base, and who had to leave or wanted to leave were able to leave, of course, but the most did stay till the end. So many, many thanks, and really you were wonderful. I was really happy to have that discussion. These topics, they of course are not isolated from other topics, and everything interrelates at the end in this world. But we came up not with 5 to 10, but with 4 topics, but they're rich and broad in themselves, so I would like to comment on them, and participants of the sessions are of course free to add other comments if you wish, or you think that I forgot just something. So the first thing that we wanted to put or to capture this on paper, we decided to call it dynamic spectrum of co-design and co-production. Well, co-design versus co-production was quickly one of the things that came up that we have discussed in respect to the question, so when do you wish to involve other actors or other knowledges or expertises? Because we had presentation, for instance, on a citizen science project where citizens, so regular citizens, so to say, were collecting the data. But in the further steps or phases of the project, the analysis of the data or evaluation were more or less done by the normal scientists, so to say. So the involvement was only on this data collection phase. And we think we have to recognize that there are more ways to give or get more input and make sense out of it. So we said that with respect to these different phases, starting with the conception of the project, like the co-design, so that you can use the input from outside, so to say, already when designing a project, and not only when it's already fixed and on the paper and approved for funding, but also at the beginning. So we said that the use of this knowledge outside the typical research community, so to say, is not only in the end product or end of the process, but also at the beginning, ongoing process, so during this process, and also at the end. For instance, one comment was that, again on the citizen science project, that why don't you ask your users how do they use that data that has been collected and made available on GeoWiki, for instance? What do they do with that data? Maybe you get another use case or another research question. So that's open for possibilities, so to say. And we also said that we should include different sorts of expertise, and that connects actually to the inclusiveness. I'll comment a moment later on that. The incentives and rewards, that was also one question, I guess that was yours on the topic before. So how to foster and how to provide incentives. We also very quickly came up with that issue that if there's nothing to get out of it, so there is little motivation to do that. So the one thing that regarding this question in GPA guidelines as well, on carrots and sticks or combination of both, there have to be some carrots for researchers in order to put the effort, invest their time, and to get something out of it as well. And of course, there are different goals, like also Alexis, you mentioned that in another session there was also a finding, so to say, that the green or gold open access may not necessarily follow the same goal at the end. So we also think you have to put your cards on the table and say, okay, we're different actors here on the table, we may have different goals, but it doesn't mean that these goals or interests have to conflict, but we could make out a synergy out of it, so that everyone gets something. And going concretely, or more concretely, we wish there should be a realistic reward structure. An example would be like in the evaluation process, considering and giving maybe some extra points for those researchers or participants who also put more effort and also engage in the open agenda and open knowledge as well. Then we're thinking about providing good examples for institutions how to measure or reward societal engagement. There was also discussion on how to put it, either to put it like in negative way as a punishment for those who do not do, or in a positive way as an incentive again for those, like showcasing good examples and at the same time kind of shaming those one who do not manage to do that. So that would be also an incentive to go an extra mile and to give that good example for institutions as well. And then we thought that there's, of course, roles for everyone. There are roles for funders, how to incentivize this process, but there are also for research institutions who also can provide incentives internally in, for example, internal evaluation processes. Yes, highlighting good examples, it was again and again one of the topics. And this reflexive view that there are different things that we can do at different levels, and we also should try, just if we are not familiar with the things, we can start with trying this out. We had one example from Hamburg. Sorry. So trying things out and learning by doing, we had an example from Hamburg, from Susanne. She told us more about her experience in Climate Services Center, if I'm right now on the abbreviation, and that there was also an engagement exercise or the whole approach with practitioners, and at the beginning no one had much experience in that, and we might be afraid when trying something new out, but at the end it worked out very well and everyone was very happy with the result. So that was very encouraging. So further we go to the topic language. We called it Language Matters. What do we mean by that? One thing is the accessible language. We're thinking of another label maybe, but we'll put it and left it like here, that there's language specific for academic communication, and there's language specific to popular science, like popular science magazines or blogs. We were thinking, is it really necessary kind of to have research results presented in 2 papers for different audiences, but we haven't found a better example or a better solution. So, because if we choose something in between, that might not fit neither that audience or that audience. So, but it's important to acknowledge there are different communication channels and there are different languages specific to those channels that you also should try to pay attention when communicating your message. And the last one, and a very interesting one, was the inclusiveness. We also discussed how to call that, either inclusiveness or diversity or something else. We came up with 2 things, with inclusiveness of geographies and inclusiveness of research disciplines. By geographies, we mean physical geographies and non-physical geographies. The reason was that at some point in time, we realized that most of us in the room, we come from the northern hemisphere and more or less based in the western part of that hemisphere. So can we really be sure that we know what the rest of the world has to say and what has to contribute? So it's not just to kind of underestimate or overestimate some knowledges, but to acknowledge that there might be different voices and they have all to be considered, especially when we talk of climate change, which is a global. So global means not only the European perspective. So that's what we have to keep in mind. And the other things was the inclusiveness of research disciplines. It especially goes to the part of social sciences and humanities, that climate change research is seen, and for good reasons, of course, as more branch of natural sciences. But if we talk of a man-made disasters, so the social sciences and humanities have to say something as well, isn't it? So that these perspectives from other, maybe non-typical, for that case, research disciplines have to be included as well. So that's in short, and please feel free to add if I missed something. Thank you.
Thank you, Elena. Indeed, very bold points. And I don't know if anyone who participated or not participated in the session has anything to add or to comment, to confirm.
To confirm, please.
I see some, I like it, physical, I like it.
Listening to the recommendations, could it be a way to embolden them by organizing them according to the 3 O's that Irina mentioned this morning? Because we had I guess in that session we had a challenge of first, who we're going to target them to. Are we going to go just to the policymaker, or do we want to go to institutions as well, because they are a bottleneck? And then the second axis of challenges was, okay, you want to prioritize some recommendations, but there are many good reasons for doing open knowledge, and some of them vary from just engaging society, good ethical reasons, being inclusive, others more pragmatic, third even more researcher-centered in terms of impact, right? So you want to include all of those, and the 3 O's do that. And the 3 O's kind of go from open science, because that's how you should be doing science, and open innovation, so you're putting in the context and societal, like socioeconomic context, and open to the world seems to cover all the good ethical reasons for doing this. So maybe that's a way to structure all the recommendations across the 3 sessions and give a nod of recognition to the political priorities.
Thank you.
Yeah, that connects, I think, mostly to this part where we also are thinking that the language and the channel and the target audience matter, so you have to think of your audience when communicating that.
Any more?
Hello. As I was not able to attend till the end yesterday, I would like to make some amendment to the first point. I think it might be also important. I think it's not just, maybe it's also meant already in this term, but just to make it clear, I think it's not just important to include different sorts of expertise, but also of experiences. So because we talked yesterday, it's not just about the experts, but also about the citizens and the users and the people who have to live or deal with the solutions and outcomes of scientific research and applications. And also regarding the first point, I would say, and when we talk about GPIs or scientific research network structures who want to involve stakeholders, then I think from my point of view, it's also good to have a sort of a plan, sort of a strategy how to do so, at which stage, which stakeholders, for what purpose to involve. So that is meant actually with co-design and co-production and differences, and I think this is a really good distinction, and yeah, I just wanted to emphasize that again.
Yes, to comment again, by saying expertise, we mean experiences as well, but there might be a good reason to put it explicitly so that it cannot be misinterpreted,
expertise
so to
means
say.
always experts, you know, just
Yes.
mostly maybe.
Yes, but
first.
in our discussion, especially with Susanne's presentation, where we also had this conceptual case or issue. So what does it mean a stakeholder and what does it mean practitioner? But because a stakeholder, at the end, everyone has a stake, so everyone is a stakeholder. You can also put it like that. Yeah, but by including different experiences and expertises, yes, that was exactly the thing. And interestingly, and I want to put it again, although it was very controversially. So yes, we had also one controversial question. I've put it explicitly to provoke that controversy regarding the Pope Francis. As some of you might have heard, Pope Francis released his papal encyclical letter in June on Laudato Si, and it's on care of our common home. And it is a document, 184, I guess, pages long. It's available on the official website of the Vatican. If you're interested, it's a very interesting read. In English and in 8 more languages, I guess. Yes. And it was a document which was prepared together with 250, I guess, climate researchers. And IASA, for instance, we had a presentation from IASA as well, was cooperating on that as well. So it's not only the religious social teaching, but it's also a cooperation of religion and science. So it's very unusual thing to communicate climate change, at least at the moment, but how about including the language specific to religion and the community specific to that religious, to that religion in communicating science? Because basically what he said in this letter, that we have messed up, we had made a big trouble on our planet, so we all have to do something. That's very interesting read, and I encourage you to take a look.
Any more comments, contributions? Yes, Susanne.
So on the one hand, what we discussed were sort of recommendations to involve practitioners into research on the whole. But on the other hand, you could as well do recommendations to involve practitioners in developing the open access tools themselves. This was just the trial to do the link to your open access issue here.
Well, one thing regarding the language matters that I forgot to mention, it was also on the language of the citizen versus science or policy. So by saying science and society, we kind of imply that there is a strict demarcation line between science and society. But who are the citizens? As I guess Kim was also, who said that people who are labeled scientists and who participate in those projects, they also often have academic background, or maybe the scientists who are, or citizens who are scientists or researchers in other research fields, but not the climate research. So is it a citizen? So is it a citizen or a scientist in that case? So what do we mean by science? It's a roughly, actually very clearly defined climate researchers community, and everyone who do not belong to that is a citizen then. So it's a question of definition.
I think it's really important to have things clear, and also to be clear about what are my stakeholders or practitioners. But I think also it also depending what hat you have on. And when we talk about practitioners, then maybe mostly we talk about in some way people who are involved because it's their job. So they are involved as professionals within their institutions, however. And when they are involved as private people with their educational background, professional background, because they're interested in, then I would call them more or less citizens or people who are interested in this issue and want to participate and co-design or co-produce. So But I think, there are different concepts, but maybe this could help. Yes.
The point might be that there might be a need to more detailed or purposeful definition than just to say in this big label science and society.
Yes, I mean, what we talked yesterday, Irina also mentioned that it's often not really clear what analytical framework and concept you have in the background before you do, starting involving stakeholders for what purposes, however. And that would be helpful to have a concept